Hey, welcome to the Dog Geek Podcast. This is Ashley, your host and official dog geek. So, today I want to talk about extinction in dog training. What is it? Why is it important? And how can we be aware of it when we're trying to change behavior in our dogs, and why it's really important to understand what's going on. So, when we talk about extinction of a behavior, this means that your dog slowly will stop repeating a behavior and eventually it will go away. So, when we look at something, an example, let's say, of jumping. So you have a dog at home who's jumping a lot when you or a guest enters the house. So think about first how long your dog has been doing that behavior. Have they been doing it? Is this new? Something that just started in the past month? Or is it something your dog's been doing for 3 to 4 years and now we're trying to work to change that? So, depending on how long your dog's been doing the behavior, will depend on how long it takes for that behavior to become extinct. The extinction length is going to be longer the longer your dog's been practicing the behavior. So, um, when something like jumping on guests is happening, a lot of times your dog's finding it rewarding for one reason or another, or they just don't know what else they're supposed to do. So, your job as the guardian or a trainer coming in is to one, make sure that dog's not getting any sort of satisfaction from the jumping up. So, no one's talking to the dog, looking at them, touching them, any of that. Stuff that your dog will find rewarding, we don't want to do because then the dog's going to repeat the behavior. So when the dog is jumping, we want to ignore that behavior, maybe just walk away, turn your back. Maybe a dog needs to be kept behind a gate if they're a little either too big or too exuberant about it for safety purposes. But then we want to make sure to teach them the correct behavior, which might be, putting food on the ground, asking for a sit, things like that. And when we're doing those things during training, what you'll start to see is that the jumping behavior should become less and less each week that you're practicing the new training techniques. So this is called extinction. So it's not something that's going to stop right away. We're not nipping this like in the butt in a day because your dog's been practicing it for so long. It's just part of their repertoire, right? It's just this automatic response that they have because they've been practicing it for X amount of time. So give them a break. Learning a new thing, learning how to behave in a new way does take some time. It takes repetition, and the jumping slowly will fade. Now, will it go away completely? Not necessarily, because one, dogs are dogs and they jump. Two, you can't control everybody else coming into the house. So even maybe your close friends, your family, maybe they know what to do, but then you have somebody come in to maybe work on the house, or you have a friend of a friend's come over and they don't know how to react with your dog. They get really excited to see your dog, and maybe they're actually calling your dog up, right? Patting on the chest, trying to get your dog to jump up because they think that's so cute. Well, your dog knows that that's a behavior, so they may go back to that and do a jump up. So, um, so keep that in mind that, if your dog has already learned a behavior and how to do something and they've been practicing it, it's going to be in that repertoire. Even if it's packed away, it's still there. They can still pull it out. So, um, things to keep in mind. So let me backtrack here for a second. Um, with any dog behavior, your dog is going to repeat things that they like. So if they're pulling and they get to where they want to go, guess what? Pulling means they got where they wanted. That's rewarding for them. So they keep doing it. Jumping, right? We give a lot of attention. Barking, we talk with them. So when your dog finds things rewarding to them, you have to look at it from the dog's perspective. Are going to repeat the behavior. Dogs, when something is not rewarding, dogs tend to not repeat it, and they'll do something alternatively that is more rewarding, which is what we do when we're using food or rewards in training, things that motivate your dog. So when they enjoy not jumping because they're getting more attention and more reward for not jumping up and putting all four on the floor, then they're going to choose that behavior more often. Um, so that if you don't want a behavior to repeat itself, Do not give it any attention or reward. That's really important. That's really key. And it's a hard thing for us to stop because we want to correct our dogs a lot of times, like we do with a child. We want to say, hey, listen, you can't do that. Here's why. But with dogs, they don't speak our language. So us trying to talk with them or pushing them down, the same techniques we would use for, say, a person. If a person comes in that you don't want them in your space, you might push them away. That's something that we instinctively would do. But to a dog, they might find that exciting, rewarding. Are we playing? What are we doing? So the question needs to be not, I want my dog to stop doing this thing, but it needs to be, what do I want my dog to do? So you have to look at it from the other side and say, okay, I don't want my dog to pull. Well, what do I want them to do? I want them to either come next to me and a heel when I ask. I want them to, stay in this, I call it the reward zone, the radius of my leash around me. I want them to stay there. I want them to look at me if I call their name. I want them to leave an item if I ask them to leave it. So what do I want from my dog? What do I want them to do? And then how can I make those choices that I'm looking for really, really rewardable and exciting? So my dog chooses to do them more often. And then the other behaviors, the pulling on leash, I'm not giving zero attention to, and the dog does not find rewarding. And slowly they will stop that behavior. And that's the extinction. But it is slow. It's really time consuming and you have to be really, really patient. So you can use, if you're getting stuck in your dog training and things aren't working or you're thinking that this is not changing, then, a behavior that you want to change isn't changing, then we need to talk about, one, is everybody being consistent in the home and is doing the same things or not doing the same things? And then two, we'll talk about your mechanics, right? How are you doing these new behaviors? Are you doing them correctly? Is your dog understanding what we're asking of them to do? And, or maybe are you asking your dog to do something in an environment that's too difficult? So inside your home where there's no other things going on, your dog's not stimulated, sure, they can focus, they can learn, they can maybe do a sit, a stay, no problem. And then you bring them outside and, they saw a squirrel and you're asking them to sit or asking them to stay or asking them to come back to you. Well, forget it, right? You had increased the excitement level of what's going on. They can't tap into you or the behaviors you're asking them to do, and they're zoning out. So that has an increased level of difficulty. So you need to kind of gradually be exposing them to different distractions while using some of those cues, so that they're capable of doing it in a higher, in a higher distraction environment. Sorry, my brain today is like not working. Anyway, and then part of the training is also finding what your dog is going to find rewarding. So the reason I like to use reward-based training methods is because if we're doing that, you cannot hurt your dog. So if you're using food, toys, praise, talking, a reward could even be that you're at the front door to go out for a WALK and you open the door and you ask them to do a wait, which they have learned previously. You ask them to do the wait and you open the door. The reward is that then you get to go back, then you get to go outside. If you go to pull forward and I didn't say it was okay, then you don't get to go outside. You come in or whatever, we close the door. So, and that's because your dog finds going outside rewarding. So it doesn't always have to be food, but using food and using rewards, things that your dogs find motivating, it's not going to hurt your dog. You can't break them in any way when using those types of training methods. Whereas when you're using fear-based methods, shock collars, prong collars, choke collars, anything that causes fear or harm to your dog physically or mentally can have long-lasting traumatic behavioral problems. So that's why I do not like using any of them. Not only for that reason, obviously, I don't want to cause fear or pain in my dogs, but they can cause a lot of other psychological issues. So, which then you have to train that problem. So, So we go back through and we go through all of this. Now, if all of these things are happening correctly, okay, everybody's being consistent. Your technique in your training and your cues is spot on. You're using things your dog is finding rewarding. Then maybe what's happening is the extinction of a behavior is just taking a little bit longer. It just takes time. So, you should see a small percentage of that behavior decrease every week. It's not going to go from, it's not going to decrease, 50% in 2 days or even possibly a week, depends on the dog. But you want to give that dog time and you want to be patient and you want to be consistent. And then the behaviors will extinct. Now, there is a possibility that your dog will get what's called an extinction burst. So there's, maybe they're learning this newer behavior, and then something happens, right? Again, we'll talk about jumping, like I said. So, everybody's been doing great. The dog hasn't been jumping up on your guests. And then someone comes in who's just a little bit excited, who's a little bit energetic, and like the dog's getting all ramped up. And, and all of a sudden the dog starts jumping wildly out of control and is just going bananas. So this would be an extinction burst where yes, they have learned all of these the new behaviors that we want for on the floor, and we've been practicing all these things consistently. But then this kind of seemingly out of nowhere occasion happens, and your dog just goes, jumping all over the place. So just remember, again, take a breath, give your dog a break, give yourself a break, and just go, okay, it's still in his repertoire. It's still back there in the filing cabinet, and he just pulled it out because he couldn't think about any other alternative option, and it just popped back up. But again, stay consistent, put it back in the filing cabinet for him, and bring out all of those things that you've been doing. And the behavior will, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, not come back, and he should stick with all his new cues. So something else that I find that happens when we're doing some different trainings, I just want to kind of touch on a couple other things that can happen, whether when we're doing training. So one of the things that some people have said, well, why use techniques that take so much time and that you have to be so patient with, and they're going to take a long time, as opposed to just immersing my dog into that scary situation, which would be called flooding. So the reason that we don't recommend flooding your dog into a scary situation, which is a very controversial, see my brain, controversial technique, is because I think I've mentioned this in previous podcast, your dog's emotional brain is very similar to people, and that those connections are very similar. So when there is something that is scary to a dog and you flood them with that scary feeling, they don't just go, oh, okay, you know what? I was scared, but I'm okay here. This is fine. This is good. That it doesn't work that way. Their brain is in overdrive, in fear. They're out of their thinking brains. They go over threshold for stress, anxiety, fear is over threshold. And what then tends to happen is if your dog can't fight out of the situation or flee out of the situation, right? So those are the two typical responses that people talk about, fight or flight. If they cannot, because maybe they're on that leash, they can't get away, they turn to trying to growl or snip or bite, because that's their only other tool in their toolbox. And if neither one of those work, then they go to freeze. And this is what we tend to see a lot of times in some dog training, is that the dog will freeze. And some people say, oh, good, the dog has just accepted that, this is what this is. And that's not what's happening. The dog basically almost becomes frozen. They freeze in fear, terror. And when we repeat those things, like we're talking about the flooding, when we repeat pulling them into a scary situation and keeping them there and not allowing them to fight or flight, then dogs can have what's called learned helplessness. And it is a mental state of an animal after repeatedly being forced to withstand an aversive. So, you're just repeatedly pushing them into scary situations and they don't have any way out. So they just have this helpless feeling, which could be kind of considered like a depression stage, but they become frozen and they're too afraid to try to get away because of typically it's a discomfort. When they try to get away, they get a shock. When they try to get away, they get a yank, things of that nature. So they're just helpless, which is so sad to me because they're supposed to be these companion animals. They have their own brains, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and it's so controlling to feel as though we are going to have our dogs be in these helpless states where they have zero choices and their emotions don't matter, and that the dog just has to accept things because that's what I say. Um, so it's that's really sad to me because I don't want that kind of relationship for that dog. Um, but that's so let me see if I can kind of get my brain back on some sort of track here. So, a lot of people will use the flooding, and dogs will have learned helplessness in situations because people don't want to take the time to go through the extinction process. Especially nowadays, everything is super fast, right? Everything we get is either delivered in a day or the same day. We don't have commercials anymore. We have we can watch a series of a show in a 24-hour period. Information is just so right there, readily available. You can take courses right away. It's like, you want to start a class today? Boom, start a class today online. So people don't necessarily want to take the time to practice and have change happen. They want things to change and happen right now, and which is a shame because the dogs have to learn. They're just like people. So if somebody has a bad habit, let's say it's biting their nails, that habit is not going to stop in a day. It's not going to stop in a week. It's going to take that person time to change the habit, change the way the brain is processing information, and it's similar with our dogs. So, see, my brain is not on straight today. So think about that with your dogs when you want you, or if you're trying to teach them behaviors and it's taking time, give them that time to do that. So that's what extinction is. That was this whole point of this podcast, was to talk about extinction. And I'm going a little off the rails, but that's okay. It's my podcast. I guess I can pretty much do whatever I want, and I have nobody telling me it's bad or wrong. But I like to share that. And I think part of my wanting to do this, a podcast, and wanting to start a YouTube channel, which I am starting with some videos, is because when I see videos of now it's just a different training philosophy. And I've talked about that before, different types of training methods. Um, I see these dogs in the videos and I read some comments, which I do have to stop doing because it does get me upset. It's an emotionally triggering thing for me. And because I don't know these people, they could be coming from anywhere. But, people are doing a lot of this forceful flooding, very aggressive training methods with dogs. And when I'm watching the dogs, I'm seeing a dog that's not enjoying themselves. They're not happy. They're scared. They're timid. I'm looking at a lot of body language, and it's really sad to me. And then the comments from people, because, you put it out there on the internet and someone says, well, I guess this must be true. And a lot of people are, well, this is great work and this is fantastic and all that kind of stuff. And I just feel bad for the dogs. I feel bad that I don't want people to think that that's the only way or the best way. It's partly to a matter of opinion. I think the best way is a force-free way. Again, I want to be kind to my dogs, and I've also talked about the, dominance alpha theory, why that is not relevant to your dogs, in my opinion. And so I'm hoping that with these podcasts and possibly the YouTube channel, that anyone who listens will just kind of gain a little bit of understanding for their dogs, a little bit of compassion, and and patience, and give everybody a break. Your dogs a break, and you a break. You're trying to work. Two different species are trying to learn to communicate with each other, and sometimes it's working, and sometimes it doesn't. So, um, I think that's about I think that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you were able to follow along, and that it wasn't too much rambling or off the rails. Like I said, I'm a little off my game today. I sent my daughter to school with a glass dish for some stupid reason. I heated her up some pasta in a glass dish, and instead of putting it into the little heater cooler, I just put a cover on it and popped it in her lunch bag, thinking, "Oh, no big deal." Well, she went to school. It had broken her lunchbox, and poor thing couldn't eat her pasta, and they had to clean it up and throw away the dish. So, yeah, so my brain is not quite on straight. What else did I do today that was a problem? I opened all the windows, opened the doors while the AC was on. Uh, yeah, this is just my day today. My brain's not screwed on straight, but you know what? That's okay. I still showed up here, showed up for the podcast. I'm going to show up for myself as much as possible today, and keep doing it. If you keep showing up, you can't go wrong. So, happy training, everybody. Please, if you want me to talk about anything specific to you, leave me a comment and let me know, and I'll touch up on a subject. Check out the YouTube channel, Happy Training, and all the podcasts are available up there. And hopefully, I'll be able to start putting up some content. Just trying to figure out how to actually do that and upload all the videos and all that jazz. So yes, be well. I was gonna end with my guiding principles, but holy crap! Okay, do I completely forgot? Okay, so do no harm to your dog. Please have fun. Enjoy spending time with them. Enjoy training with them, and just love the dog. Lots of love. All right, everybody, take it easy. Catch you next time.